Good afternoon and welcome to the Law&Crime Network. I'm Angelica Spanos. Thanks for joining us today. It is a busy day here as we are following two live trials this afternoon, and we will take you to both of those courtrooms later on in the show. We're also following the murder trial for a couple accused of abusing and killing their 2-year-old foster child, and it is off to an emotional start. This is the tragic story about the death of a little girl named Layla Marie Daniel. Jennifer Rosenbaum is accused of killing Layla. Jennifer said she choked on a piece of chicken, but an autopsy report revealed she died of blunt force trauma to her abdomen that ruptured her pancreas. Jennifer is facing felony murder counts, and her husband Joseph is looking at a count of murder in the second, as stated by Georgia law. They're both facing additional cruelty to children charges regarding their other foster child, Millie. This case is drawing some parallels to the Sharon Mathews trial, which we reported on back in June. And you'll remember Wesley Mathews, who was unanimously sentenced to life in prison by a jury after he pled guilty to a lesser charge of injury to a child by omission. This is after a jury found him guilty of killing his adopted daughter, Sharon, who was only 3 years old. Mathews initially said she was missing, then changed his story and said she choked on milk, and he admitted to putting her body in a trash bag and taking it to a culvert near him and his wife's home. I bring up this case because joining us today is Prosecutor Jason Fine. He's the Assistant District Attorney with the Dallas County DA office. Jason, thank you so much for coming here today. You are the lead prosecutor in the Mathews trial, and of course, that's what we're going to chat about. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So first off, let's go back in time a little bit. Talk about when you heard about this case and what you thought of when you knew that you were going to get it.
So initially, I heard about the case when it happened back in October of 2017. I wasn't assigned the case. It was assigned to another prosecutor. We had a change in our administration at the beginning of this year. And I got the call on December 31st, the day before the changeover, that I was going to be on the case. And you know, what you hear and what you see in the media once you actually get involved in the case is quite different. And, you know, I knew I had my work cut out for me. I knew that the trial wasn't going to wait for me to catch up to speed. So I had to basically get up to speed, you know, a year after everything happened as quickly as I could and just digest everything I could and eventually come up with a strategy along with the rest of my team on how we were going to successfully prosecute this man.
And talking about your strategy a little bit, during this trial, you went at him pretty aggressively. You questioned him. What made you go with that strategy?
You know, people kid me. I always run a little bit hot to begin with. I try to ramp it down a little bit. You know, obviously, you try not to get so emotionally attached to a case. It's difficult on cases like these not to have some sort of attachment. I think my plan initially wasn't necessarily to go aggressively with him, but the way that he started right from the beginning, not really answering simple questions and being difficult, I got a little irritated. I probably let myself get more frustrated, lost my cool faster than I should have, and it sort of just, it went from there. I mean, to me, when I'm in trial, you know, you go in with a game plan and you toss it out the window the way things, it's a process that you have to be fluid with, and his attitude, I guess, dictated my attitude, and, you know, should I have been a little calmer? Probably, but I guess it worked out okay.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I remember about it is at one point you confronted him and said, "I dare you to take the life sentence and we'll all go home."
Yeah, you know, he had said on direct exam that he wished that he could switch places with Sharon. Whenever I hear that, it kind of irritates me a little bit because obviously he's the reason why Sharon isn't here. I probably should have been a little more artful with how I asked the question, but you know, basically it was one of those deals where if that's what you want, then this jury has the power to do it. Is that what your recommendation is? And so again, that was probably a situation where my emotions, my frustration got a little ahead of me, and I should have asked the question a little better. But that's basically what that boiled down to, is if you're really serious about this, then let's go ahead and sign it up, and you want to make right by her, that's the best you can do under our system.
Right, and you mentioned how he said he would love to have switched places with Sharon. Did anything else he said during the trial surprise you? I know for me and for a lot of us here, when you asked him about the trash bag and when he was talking about that trash bag and he refused to say that it was a trash bag, even though it clearly was, he was talking about the coloring and all that stuff. What'd you think at that? Did that surprise you at all? And was there anything else that he said that you were like, what?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, for the trash bag, which that's funny because now I guess I'm the trash bag prosecutor around here. One of my co-counsel, Brian Mitchell, he was sitting with me at the table and he wasn't answering the question. I had been up there before. I remember I had been up there before. I don't remember if it was cell phone records or photos or something. And he was irritating me. I think I was irritating him. I went back to the table because in Texas, we generally sit at the table unless we have to ask for permission to approach. And so he wouldn't answer the question about the garbage bag. And Brian just sort of whispered to me, he's like, just go up there and get the bag. And I thought about it, and I went back and watched that part because I wanted to see how it played out, because I didn't remember exactly how it went. And so you can kind of hear me sigh, and that's exactly what happened. Is I just thought, all right, let's just do it. And so Brian says basically the chair just kind of flew back, and the next thing you know, I'm up there, unfurling the trash bag and putting it in his face. And I think even at that point, when he's literally looking at the bag and won't answer it, again, it was just a reaction, what I said at that point.
Yeah. And another thing that stuck out I want to ask you about is when Mathews was up there talking about the snakes, how when he was in that culvert and he hoped that a snake would come up there and get him at that point. What'd you think when he said that?
I mean, look, my personality, I'm a smart aleck. It comes across sometimes in trial. Again, I don't want to offend jurors, but my personality is what it is. And so, I hear that and I'm thinking this is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard in my life. So the first thing that goes through my mind is I'm thinking, all right, first of all, you weren't laying in there waiting for snakes. I know that's not true. So how am I going to go about talking the snake thing with you? And, I'm thinking, all right, so if you're in there waiting for the snakes to get you, at what point do you realize the snakes are not going to come get you? And when does that dividing line happen between snakes and no snakes? And now I'm just going to go cover up the rest of my crime. And so I was being a little difficult with him on that. But that was what went through my mind. And I'm thinking, this is just his story. And that's story. It's one story after the other. The first story was ridiculous, and it almost seemed like every story he told afterwards got even more ridiculous. I mean, the first story about coyotes getting Sharon and all that almost seemed like the best of all the stories. I mean, you end up with snakes and reincarnation at the end. So it was, he has quite the vivid imagination, I guess.
Right. During, while you were working on this trial, what was your relationship like with Mathews, but also his wife or any other of their family members?
I mean, there was no relationship. I mean, his wife was initially charged with child abandonment. It was a case that, while there was PC to establish the case, was something that looking at it and consulting again with my team, Sheree Thomas, Brian Mitchell, as well as Brian Higginbotham, who did all of our appellate work on this, and we'll handle the appeal. We knew that we couldn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, so the decision was made collectively and backed by my bosses, including Judge Crusoe, who's our elected DA, that we needed to go ahead and dismiss that case, because while it's not what we wanted to do, it was the right thing and something we couldn't prove. So her case was dismissed. There was frustration there. We subpoenaed her as a witness, not knowing exactly what she was going to say. Certainly, I don't trust her credibility, and if she had wanted to partake in the process from our side, I would have had to vet it. Her attorney said that she didn't want to participate. It wasn't a situation where I was going to put her on there, not knowing what she was going to say and not really believing in her credibility. So there was really no relationship there.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's switch gears for a second. I want to ask you about the jury, because in the beginning of this trial, did you feel the jury out at all? Did you sense anything that you could read them, that you'd be able to run with this, even maybe from the opening statements? What was their mood during this?
We started by selecting this jury. We brought we sent out over 2,000 summons. We brought 350 people. 350 people showed up, brought them down to the central jury room, had them fill out questionnaires, qualified them. broke them from 350 down to about 100 and maybe 80 people and started breaking into panels from there. And Cherie Thomas, who picked the jury on this case and was co-counsel, she did a great job. And we knew there were certain things that we needed to make sure that they were going to be able to follow the law and not let their emotions just run wild with things. So I knew when I got in there the first day of trial that Cherie had picked us a really good jury. In opening statement, I didn't get a lot of sense one way or the other. The first day of trial, as we continued on, it was kind of a setup day for the second day. That's how we looked at it. And by the time the second day came across and we had Agent Strain on there talking about the crime scene photos, and then we went with Detective Diaz going through all the stories and all the evidence that we had collected, even up until the point of trial, and then with Dr. Daigle about past injuries and Dr. Ventura with how Sharon died. At that point, sitting so close to the jury, you can see, you can see some tears, you can see head nods and things like that. And so certainly by the second day, I felt really good. And then as the defense started presenting their witnesses, you get that sense, as you know, doing this, when you've got a jury with you, and it's sort of just an intuition. And certainly by the second day, we felt like we had the jury with us and that they were going to do the right thing.
All right, one last question here. Let's talk about the plea deal, because it ranged from prohibition or life in prison, and that's kind of a wide range. Why was it so wide there?
That's the statute in Texas. The injury to a child by omission, or even not by omission, causing serious bodily injury, it's a first-degree felony. And with that, if somebody's never been convicted of a felony before and under certain situations, they can get probation. They're eligible for probation. And so that's something that Cherie did a great job of in jury selection, is qualifying the jurors on the ability to be able to consider probation. Not that they're going to give probation, but consider it. And so, the plea bargain was put in place before I even got on the case. It was something that I agreed with. It was something that I'm going to honor, even if I don't agree with it, but I did in this case. And it was based on what we could prove. We felt like we could prove injury to a child. Obviously, he felt like he was guilty. And in the punishment phase, given that we get to go to the jury, we get to put on extraneous acts, we get to put on aggravating circumstances. And so the jury, I believe, had a good understanding of what really happened, and that's why they came to their conclusion. So I have no regrets how that went down. I know a lot of people were confused and upset initially, but I think the end result, well, I know the end result is exactly what we wanted, and that's, he's going to die in prison.
All right. Well, Jason Fine, thank you so much. You did your job. Again, Jason Fine was the lead prosecutor in the Mathews trial. Jason, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you again for having me. Have a great day.
All right, coming up next after the break, we're going to take you live to the trials we are following today. But again, we have to take a quick break, so stay with us.